gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this annual event. We've deliberately picked a thought-provoking theme, and many of you will say, well, we talk about ethical leadership, or we talk about leadership, we talk about sustainability, we talk about transformation all the time. What we're trying to do is to bring all of that together with a specific purpose. There's a lot of talk that happens at conferences, and you will pick up from what we will be discussing today, and how we would like to approach it is an approach with an outcome. It's an approach with a destination and not a continuous journey. So I welcome you all, and I trust that you will enjoy the day with us. In order to save time, I hope that we observe all the protocol now, so that when the next speakers can come in, we can get into business and do what we need to do. So I give you carte blanche to say the protocol has been observed, and let's carry on with the business. I've not acknowledged the acting Chief Procurement Officer, so also to the Chief Procurement Officer, welcome to our event. If I can just get the guys to bring up my presentation quickly. The initial intention was, in terms of protocol, to have the Minister to open for us and set the scene for us. But yesterday she notified us that she was called to another engagement and will be arriving a little later, so at last minute we had to change our program. So there is a short presentation that I've prepared to try and set the scene for us this morning. So the presentation starts with our theme, and you will see that at the bottom of that I've got this black chain. And it symbolized or symbolic in that the intention is that as a group of leaders in the industry, that together doing things the right way all the time, we'll be able to achieve this outcome of a transformed and sustainable built environment. Now, I steal this quote from Dr. Naidu and the Deputy President of SABTACO all the time, because I think it's very relevant. Not that we like the face of the person who's necessarily reflected there, but he made a profound statement that says that government is not a solution to our problem. The government is the problem. The government does not solve problems. It subsidizes them. Government's view of the economy could be summarized in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. The problem is not that people are taxed too little. The problem is that government spends too much. And the emphasis underlined is by myself. So, what's the state of our industry? We've come to a screeching halt. The house is burning. So, going back to the context of what Ronald Reagan was saying, is that this bus has stopped. Industry is suffering. Is it time to regulate? Is it time to tax? Or is it time to subsidize it? If we look at the procurement environment and we look at the legislative framework within this procurement environment, it's obviously started by the Constitution, in particular Section 217, one of the Constitution, and the CEO of the BBC will remind me there are A, B, and C of that. We won't go into that today. And then you've got the Public Sector Procurement, or the Public Finance Management Act, or Municipal Finance Management Act, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, the Supply Chain Management Policy, the Anti-Corruption, whatever, and we can go on and on and on. And this is what officials who need to implement are faced with. This is what they need to comply with in order to deliver on their mandate. And the question is our industry, and in particular procurement, not over-regulated? So let's look at the process when we start any initiative within a community. You've got the identification of the need, and then you've got the planning towards that, and then you've got the procurement process to identify the professionals, and then you have that design process that happens, and then you've got the procurement process to get the contractor on board, and then you've got construction, and you know that entire process can take anything up to 54 months. That's how long it takes to deliver on a project. Now, if we read section 217(1) of the Constitution, it says that procurement, I'm not sure if I can go back. It says there, it's provided the basis for procurement system which is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost effective. Now, if we look at this entire process, what comes to mind is the question is whether this entire procurement process of government is constitutional. Because if you look at the amount of money that government spends through their supply chain processes, by the time that project hits the ground, the budget is spent. Now, this is a government that borrows so much of its money in order to deliver, and then we spend so much of it on a process in order to make sure that it's fair, equitable, transparent. But it's not cost effective anymore. And in my mind, we're not ticking that particular requirement of our Constitution. So maybe, Mr. CEO of the BBCB, it's time for us to take this process to the Constitutional Court and get it tested. Because is it right that we take so long? Is it right that it takes up to a year or a year and a half just to get a professional appointed to start on a project? Can't be right. It's not fair to our communities. It's not cost effective. So is this process for the greater good or for the common good? So what is the difference between the two? Greater good is a general advantage that you can only gain by losing or harming something that is considered less important. Whilst the common good in philosophy, economics, and political science refers to either what is shared and beneficial for all or most members of a given community. So if you look at our Constitution, and if we have to engage with the architects of our Constitution, and we ask them, when you were drafting this, what did you have in mind? Did you have common good in mind? Or did you have greater good in mind? And I think the response will be overwhelming, that the intention was for common good. Because it was never, in order to be fair, it can't be for the greater good. Because greater good means that something happens at the expense of something else. Unfortunately, in our environment, the sacrifice, as far as greater good is concerned, is transformation and a sustainable built environment. And this is why things are falling apart. That is the sacrifice, because the implementers of this framework called the Constitution has changed what was intended as a common good to a greater good. And it's sometimes through the play of words, omissions, and all sorts of fancy things. That's that. So, what now? This is where we are. So as SABTACO, we will always look at solutions. We don't just talk problems. We want to fix our problems. We want to move forward. So it brings us to the point of ethical leadership. And leadership is defined as influence. So if you have influence, you are a leader. It doesn't mean you have to carry the title of president. I don't like to be called the president of SABTACO, because the role that I play in this organization is that of a servant, not as a president. It's a title, but it's not what we do. Ethics should govern our behavior. Now, if your behavior has been in a particular way till now, nothing's going to change that perception of you, because you will always be perceived as a person with ethics or without, focusing on the positive only. Leaders can find a balance between self-understanding and other understanding, where self-understanding is you need to make sense of your own values, your beliefs and your ideas. But others' understanding is to make sense of the needs and differences among others, and to find the delicate balance between the two. Another definition of a leader is someone that leaves things better than he or she found them. So it's when you step away from the position that you held, that you are able to say, through my influence, I've been able to leave something better. Now all of us have influence, whether that influence is over your own mind, whether it influences over your children, your influences over your colleagues at work or wherever. We all have influence, meaning we are all leaders. And we have that responsibility to make sure that when we step away, we've left it in a better state than what it was before we step in. As black leaders in this country, we need to do that introspection and say, how have we left this organization, this industry, after we've stepped away from it? And if it's in a worse state, we've not led, and we've not led ethically. Sorry, there was an interesting comment, but I want to go back to that. Leaders can't lead without followers. You know, as a country, we've got this tendency of worshipping the ministers and worshipping the president and worshipping and worshipping and worshipping until they are no more. And then, what do? So we blindly follow, and we allow us to follow and follow. So as followers, we need to also take responsibility. We need to have a clear picture of what we need from the influential leaders. And we need trust. We need care. We need stability. We need hope. If there's one thing in this industry that most people will ask is hope. Because at the moment we're at this cul-de-sac where we believe we are losing hope. We're losing hope in our leaders. We're losing hope in our country. We're losing hope in our industry because things have come to a stop. So if we want the cooperation of humans around us as leaders, we need to make them feel that they're important. And you do that by being genuine and humble. These are the words of Tata Madiba. So what are our needs? Talking to some of our client bodies, our industry leaders, what are our needs? We need constant engagement with you. We don't want to engage with you and then you run your own way, and then when we meet up with you again, what we engaged you on has taken a different shape and form, and you tell us, but we've engaged you. That's not what we want. We want to be part of a continuous engagement. We would like to have engagement on all issues that impact on the built environment. Remember, this is our livelihood. This is what makes us. This is what sustains us. And if we engage on you in a negative way, we are just cutting our noses to spite our face. We need less regulation to ensure long-term sustainability, CPO. We need to reduce this procurement cycle. We need to do away with competition on the basis of price. As professionals, we are not goods. We refuse to be seen as goods. We are professionals. We've studied, we are qualified in what we do. We have a responsibility of acting professionally as well. And that's what we need to work on. But we want those decision makers to treat us as professionals and not as goods and services. We understand that you are doing things in terms of a particular legislative framework. We understand that. We work with you. But we will toy with you. If you have that will to go and toy to get things to change, we will do that. We're not afraid to do that. We have done that, by the way. Ask the guys of the Eastern Cape. If we don't agree with what you do, we will toy and we'll break the way things were done in the past, and we'll do it unapologetically. And then you can blacklist us and our companies if you are single-minded. Because we're not doing things for our companies, we're not doing things for self-interest, we're doing things for the betterment of our industry, for our kids that need to step into this industry and take it over. So when we step away from it, we've left something that's better and not worse. We need the industry to be subsidized and get it going again. So I know that we're talking about prompt payment. What does prompt payment mean? People say 30 days after you've done your work, you should get paid. That's not prompt. Prompt is, here's my work, pay me. That's prompt. Hey, when you go to the shop, you buy bread. Here's my bread, there's your money. Hey, so why must we wait 30 days? People go hungry. Remember, it sometimes takes you 4 months, 5 months to produce that product to the point where you can invoice. And then you must wait another 30, 60, 90, 120, and we can go on. These are maybe perceived as pie in the sky, but it's doable. Tata Madiba said that if you can dream it, you can do it. Why not? We need to trust and be trusted. We need stability. We need hope. We want to contribute to the transformation and sustainability of the built environment. because there can be no greater gift than that of giving one's time and energy to help others without expecting anything in return. And that's the message that I wanted to leave today, is that as members of SABTACO, we need to give our time. We need to give to help us take this industry in the interest of common good and not greater good. I thank you, and I thank our sponsors for supporting our event. Thank you.